Brooklyn Bloodlines, Caden Winters, The Icebox. Caden Winters. To the Bureau, he's the icebox. Cold, controlled, a Fed who don't flinch. To Brooklyn, he's the law with a grudge, a man hunting shadows with the patience of a sniper. Winters grew up in upstate New York, a world away from the noise of Brooklyn's streets. He believed in order, in rules, in clean lines where chaos didn't bleed through. But life has a way of cracking clean glass. 2015, his partner was blown to pieces in a car bomb meant for him. Winters was close enough to feel the heat, to smell the steel. From that night on, organized crime wasn't just his job, it was personal. He rose fast through the bureau, taking the toughest cases, never losing a beat. Cold three-piece suits, eyes that could cut through lies, a rep for being the kind of agent who'd burn his own team if it meant getting justice. They called him the Icebox, and he earned it. But behind the steel was a man with cracks, nights too long, silence too heavy, pills to keep him sharp, more pills to take the edge off, Adderall, benzos. He kept it quiet, off the books, a habit fed by a shady Jersey doctor whose name ain't never on record. And then there's Emily, Frankie Palermo's youngest, the one Winters met at a charity dinner, quiet smile, steady eyes. She didn't tell him about the blood she came from, and maybe he didn't ask. He married her, built a life he thought was clean. But when he was assigned to organized crime, the case file he opened had her family's name stamped across the top in red ink. D'Angelo, Palermo, blood, betrayal, everything he hated. Flashback. Winters in his office, late at night, a photo of his dead partner tucked in the desk drawer. He pours himself another coffee, pops another pill, stares at the file on Nick Palermo. On the next page is Emily's face. He shuts it fast, jaw tight. Flash forward, dinner table, Emily serving pasta. Winters talking about Goku D'Angelo, about Nick, about squeezing the net tighter. Emily's hands shake as she pours the wine. He don't notice, or maybe he does and he just don't say nothing. Winters' motivation ain't money, ain't power, it's vengeance, it's justice. It's keeping control in a world that burned his clean edges to ash. But the deeper he digs into Brooklyn, the more the cracks widen. Pills, secrets, a wife who might not be loyal to his side of the line. Special Agent Caden Winters is coming for the bloodlines. But the question is, will he bury them, or will Brooklyn bury him? Brooklyn Bloodlines, Season 2, coming soon.
Muggs, what the fuck you doing in there, you prick?
Analyzing Evil, Johnny Ringo, The Psychology of Guilt, Genius, and the Death of a Soul. A Bambi's Twisted Tales and Pizzaverse Studios production. The man who couldn't outrun himself. Some men ride for money, some for pride. Johnny Ringo? He rode 'cause he was already dead inside. He just hadn't picked a grave yet. They called him an outlaw, a killer, a poet with a pistol. But under all that violence, Johnny Ringo was something worse, a man who understood what he was. He wasn't wild, he was aware. And that's the kind of self-awareness that'll rot you faster than whiskey ever could. They say the devil gets the best tunes, right? Well, Ringo was humming a requiem from the day he learned how to shoot. The educated killer. Johnny Ringo wasn't no dumb cowboy. He spoke Latin, quoted scripture, and could outthink most preachers. But that's the curse. Intelligence without morality is just a sharper blade. That's cognitive dissonance collapse, when a man knows he's wrong but keeps digging anyway, 'cause he already sees the bottom. He knew every verse about sin, and he still wrote his own gospel in gunpowder. That's what made him different from the other outlaws. They were riding from the law. He was riding from God. The making of a monster. Ringo grew up religious, then watched faith fail him. When you raise a man on guilt, then take away redemption, you don't get a saint. You get a philosopher with a six-shooter. That's theological trauma syndrome, a psyche trained to fear divine punishment, but deprived of forgiveness. He didn't kill 'cause he hated people. He killed 'cause he thought he was damned already. A man who don't believe in heaven stops worrying about hell. That's Ringo in a nutshell, a fallen angel with a drawl. The Western nihilist. In a world where life's cheap and bullets are currency, Johnny Ringo saw clarity. He didn't chase chaos, he studied it. That's existential nihilism, the belief that nothing matters, so the only real act of control left is destruction. He wore death like a philosophy. He didn't believe in justice. He believed in symmetry, violence balanced by violence, sin paid for in spurs and smoke. To him, pulling a trigger wasn't murder, it was math. The shadow of Doc Holliday. Now here's where it gets poetic. Ringo's mirrored image was Doc Holliday. Both men sick, brilliant, drunk on death. But where Holliday had humor, Ringo had hellfire. That's shadow projection syndrome, the tendency to despise in others what you hate in yourself. Doc was what Ringo might have been if he'd ever learned to laugh at his own damnation. And Ringo? He saw in Doc a mirror that mocked him. Some men hate mirrors 'cause they lie. Ringo hated his 'cause it told the truth. Guilt as religion. By the time he rolled into Tombstone, Johnny Ringo wasn't just a killer. He was a priest of pain. He'd drink, fight, quote the Bible, and damn himself between verses. That ain't madness. That's chronic moral injury. The mind's way of confessing without believing it'll ever be forgiven. He wasn't scared of dying. He was scared of living long enough to see what he'd become. A man that's smart don't need a hangman. His own brain builds the gallows. The death of a thinking man. When they found Ringo dead under a tree, gun in hand, wound in his head, folks said maybe it was suicide. But that ain't just death. That's psychological exhaustion. When the weight of guilt gets so heavy, the only way out is silence. He didn't die scared. He died tired. You can't outdraw your own thoughts, kids. They're faster than lead. Doc's last duel. Now there's theories, right? That Doc Holliday met him, gave him the duel he was looking for. One last sermon in gunfire. If that's true, it ain't just legend. It's poetry. Ringo wanted judgment. Doc gave it to him, not as an enemy, but as a man who understood what it meant to be damned with class. Some duels ain't about winning. They're about finishing. Legacy of the damned. Johnny Ringo became a ghost story with a Bible in his hand. A symbol of the West's dark conscience, smart enough to understand evil, too weak to escape it. That's cultural archetype fixation, when a person becomes a myth, 'cause their pain explains everyone else's. He ain't remembered for what he did. He's remembered for what he meant. Every outlaw's got 2 tombstones. One in the ground, and one in the mind of every man who ever looked in the mirror too long. Johnny Ringo wasn't evil. He was aware. And awareness without forgiveness, that's hell in a human body. He wanted peace, but he couldn't believe in it. He wanted redemption, but he already wrote his own damnation in blood and whiskey. You want to know what killed Johnny Ringo? It wasn't a bullet. It was understanding. This has been Analyzing Evil. Johnny Ringo, The Psychology of Guilt, Genius, and the Death of a Soul. Brought to you by Bambi's Twisted Tales and Pizzaverse Studios, where we don't just watch legends die. We read their souls like scripture and pour one out for the truth. So hit subscribe, ring that bell, and remember, in the Pizzaverse, we don't fear the ghosts of the West. We ride with them. Thanks for watching.